number 25 we find Ivan Iron Man Stewart Super Off-Road, and this was developed by Graft Gold and published by Virgin Games in 1990. We can see that Iron Man Super Off-Road is a great conversion from the Leland Corporation original arcade game, and you can see that all the tracks are in there and it's pretty much identical to the arcade version. Super Off-Road can be enjoyed by up to 3 players, and in 1-player mode we play as the red car, which you can see at the back of the field. Hopefully we can pick up some turbos, and by pressing the fire button we can turbo through all these dangers and beyond those 3 computer controlled players. There aren't too many sound effects, but there is a very nice sound effect when we go over the line and when we collect some collectibles, and those are very basic, but at least it makes a great playing experience, and especially when we get to the line first. Like many of the best racers, this game will also give us an upgrade route, and my preferred upgrade is to get the top speed as quickly as possible, and then to back that up with lots and lots of nitros, and that means that we can speed our way around the track as quickly as possible. This game may look really basic on the surface, but then again this was the style of the arcade machine, and I think this music in particular, created by Jason Page, is very well done and adds just the kind of manic atmosphere that this game really needs. This circuit in particular gives the player a chance to make those mistakes, and I think it's great that the game does that, because there are so many hand-holding driving games these days. It doesn't really give the player too much action, but this reminds me of Demolition Derby, when all the cars are crashing into each other and sometimes you have to boost your way out of trouble. Just like the arcade, this game also gives us a number of continues, and that means that we should be able to get far with this. Unfortunately, we cannot select the number of continues, so we can't just march to the end of the game, and I've never actually completed this game because it does get harder later on. Small conversion details like the flags that we can crash into, and it isn't as well drawn as the console conversions, but as a super sprint type of game, I think that this is great and a great top-down racer on the Amiga. Particularly like the road textures, and you can clearly see the ramps and the potholes, and that is one of the greater features that you can see on this particular conversion. Ivan Iron Man Stewart Super Off-Road Racer is a very respected game, and it got an amazing score of 76% on the Lemon Amiga database. At number 24 we have Street Rod 2, developed by a Polish group, PZ Karen Co., and published on their California Dreams label in 1991. game we travel back to the 1960s, and it's our first job to enter our name onto a driver's license, and then being a young student in 1969 we get to check out the headlines. And apparently in this period of time the Cold War was still going on, so you'll be reading lots about Soviets and first strikes. In the meantime, let's pick out a used car from the used car section, and in here you'll find lots of expensive rides, and we haven't really got too much disposable cash at this stage. All we can do is check out all those availabilities, and if we can afford one of those, hopefully we can buy ourselves a set of wheels. We'll also find different adverts containing parts and upgrades which we'll need to attach to our cars later on, but for now let's just settle for a Ford T-Bird for $800. Very bottom of the screen in red you can see our bankroll is $750, and that means that we can only just about afford the most basic ride, and so we'll have to settle for this 1960 Mercury Monterey in a very fetching colour. We can now pimp our ride in the garage, and we can lower the roof, change the suspension and change most of the parts inside of that, and we can even slide under the car and check out the exhaust and the things which aren't usually apparent. We can wave our cursor over those and fix those and upgrade them. We are on Saturday, June the 15th, and apparently 1969, which means that there should be some action going on, but not until Wednesday. And we can wait around until Wednesday, or we can drive down to the local drive-in restaurant and see if we can flag down some action. Cars on offer in Street Rod 2 are quick, but they are very hard as well, and the challenges to begin are very hard unless you've played the first installments of this game. And unfortunately Street Rod 1, there were no votes for that whatsoever, so that's why it didn't appear in the top 50 database. But this game is an NTSC game, so you are seeing that in NTSC mode at the moment. Just like American Graffiti, we can race on a number of locations, and we can also drive for a number of prizes as well, including money and even pink slips, whatever they may be. So, choosing to drive for pink slips because we are broke, let's move on to Mulholland Drive, which is the basic journey up a mountain road. Due to the clumsy way this game operates, you will either have to press the space bar at top revs or try to press that fire button at top revs to get into drive. And now that we are in drive, you can see we are travelling 80 miles per hour, but unfortunately the frame rates are taking a dive into the floor. Street Rod 1 is supposed to be smoother than this, and it plays faster, and I can't imagine how slow and jerky this would be on a PAL machine. If we check out the NTSC version played on an 030, maybe that will speed up the processing of that road, and maybe we can get a little bit further with this, but it doesn't mean that we can catch those easy riders. if you manage to trash your wheels, then unfortunately you will get into trouble with your father, and it looks like you'll be out of a vehicle throughout the summer. And returning to the normal, slow NTSC version, if you make it to the end of the track and you don't beat that guy, unfortunately that's your summer over as well. Street Rod games are great if you love old cars, and Street Rod 2 has the amazing 78% rating on the Lemon Amiga database. Number 23, we find the amazing 4D sports driving, developed by Distinctive Software Interactive (DSI) and published by Mindscape in 1990. 4D Sports Driving is a follow-up to the game Test Drive 2, and the same guys, including Don Matrick from Test Drive 2, went on to create this game, and it's probably the last best DSi game on the Amiga. And as you can see, there are a variety of tracks to choose from, of which most of those include various stunts. So escaping from the back of a trailer like Knight Rider, all we have to do is to speed off into the distance and try to get over a few easy bridges on this very first level. The stunt tracks include huge jumps, raising and lowering bridges, and there is also banks, of course, which we can bank around, and also loop-the-loops and things like that. Unfortunately, this is a 3D game, and if you crash into something, unfortunately this is not Ridge Racer, you will not simply rebound off the side, you will do a massive dive into the air and then finally into the scenery. If the player can complete the stunt track in a great time, it means that they can try another track, and these aren't hard, it's just that trying to maneuver these things without crashing is incredibly difficult, because just like hard driving, if you make one mistake then that's virtually race over, and you have to get these jumps perfect. If you don't and make too much of a hard landing, or even miss the thing completely, then unfortunately that's game over, and that's a very nice 3D ship. Unfortunately this 3D game really doesn't take too much advantage of something that a PS1 could do with its eyes closed. The potential of this game is there, but unfortunately this game is let down, just like hard driving, by those one mistake issues, and even though I'm turboing as fast as I can off the line, I still cannot make the very first jump, and that is particularly annoying with this type of game. Another carryover from Indy 500, and something which made it into virtually all the console racers, is an action replay, and so with the one life available you can see precisely how the game managed to mess us up by replaying that accident over and over again. Despite all these antics and a painfully slow PAL mode, virtually everybody agrees that 4D sports driving is worth an incredible 79%. number 22 in our Lemon Amiga Top 50 Amiga racing games of all time, we find Indy Heat, developed by the Sales Curve and published by the Storm label in 1992. This is a conversion of the Leland Corporation Indy Heat, and of course Leland also created Ivan Ironman Stewart's Super Off-Road, and so you will find another top-down Super Sprint clone with a very similar upgrade route to Ivan Stewart's, with very similar things to choose from. And it's even more important to get our upgrade route right on this particular game, because we will be awarded for our fastest overall speed above those other guys, so it's important not only to lead, but to lead by a great margin. So I passed straight through a wall in the footage, and there are some bugs like that which can take you through to the next section, and sometimes they are a disaster if it doesn't count for the lap. But mostly all these cut-throughs you can see are actual cut-throughs in the game, so it allows us usually to take those risks. Unfortunately, colliding with other cars in the pits really hampers our progress, and that can write off our chances if you do that badly. Similar to Super Off-Road, this game has very few sound effects but no music, and so the sound effects will have to make the atmosphere, and when we crash we can see that the front of our car actually splits off and breaks away, but that does not hamper our driving ability, so it means that we can collide with most of these corners and most of the other cars and not wreck our chances of a great lap. Once again, up to 3 players can play this, as you can see by the dials on the bottom, and I can imagine this in 3-player mode is pretty hectic, and it can be mayhem when you hear red pit, blue pit, white pit all at the same time, and I love those voice sound effects as they are always appreciated on the Amiga. Red pit. Even the speed of the pit change can be upgraded, but I don't tend to bother with that particular upgrade. I just go for the tyres occasionally and then the top speed and the turbos, and that means that we can dash around the course pretty quickly, and you can see an F on the very central readout, which means that we are on our final lap, and we are actually a couple of laps ahead of all the other racers. At the end of each race you will hear some music which sounds pretty much like Project X before we move on to the next race, of which there are 11 in the whole championship. This is the very last one, this is Indianapolis, and we have 12 laps to go. All I can recommend is getting the full turbo by this stage and the fastest top speed, and simply turbo, turbo, turbo around that thing until everything is clean and tidy and we emerge in first place. If our turbo depletes, then we can always pull into the pits to get a fresh stock, and we can use maybe 5 turbos around that level, and once those turbos are used up, unfortunately we'll have to go back into the pits and to get a fresh supply. I think Indy Heat is one of the better top-down racing games that we have on the Amiga. It is very detailed in its graphics, as you can see. All the cars in the car park and even the crowd in the stands are present, and that's a lot better than many Amiga driving games which didn't go to those lengths. Every track is very colourful and detailed, the controls on offer are really good, and the sense of achievement when you complete the whole season is great, and it doesn't give us a massive heart attack either. Indy Heat is a small, lovingly crafted racing game, and even the stats are preserved. Unfortunately, it does contain some bugs, and one of those bugs is sometimes you won't be presented with the Hall of Champions at the very end, as can be seen with my play guide. And so, with this recorded footage, you can see that I managed to gain a 139 miles per hour average, which is unfortunately not my highest high score, which you can see at the moment is 159, which I scored during the competition. Indy Heat has an 80% rating on the Lemon Amiga database. Just missing out on our user voted top 20, we find 21 Supercars, developed of course by Magnetic Fields and published by Gremlin in 1990. Before each race we can use our mouse or the controller to actually upgrade our vehicle with a very limited range of upgrades, and also to repair that with one of the 4 items which can be damaged in this game. In the early levels we will find a number of other cars, of which there are 6 on this particular run, and 2 of those will be the faster cars and the rest will be the slower cars. You can see I'm trying to get around the faster vehicles, which can be bought if you manage to win the races, and you must chat your way around the salespeople in the car dealership office. Supercars 1 is another top-down Super Sprint clone, and perhaps this is the nearest to Super Sprint, with a very limited range of things to crash into and slide against, including mud and oil and water. This game may seem basic, but the graphics are certainly top-notch. You can see things by the side of the track which are swamps and buildings and even people, and it's unfortunate that they don't animate, but it means that these levels, which scroll very smoothly indeed, give the most fun, and the playfield is just about big enough to offer a great racing experience. When we crash, it doesn't send us 1,000 miles into the air to crash land spectacularly. No, we'll simply carry on from where we left off, and just like touring cars, we can rebound off the other competitors and get ourselves around those corners just that little bit quicker. At the end of each race we'll also be given some prize money, and it's essential to spend that on our car to win the next races, even if that means getting rid of our current vehicle and buying a new car altogether. We can load and save in this WHD version, and let's just skip on to the second set, the second class of levels. We'll find all the same races again, only this time with harder opponents and much difficult times ahead. See that we are now racing in an 8-player race. That's more than the 6 that we started with, and you can see more deadly traps on the floor, including water and mud and oil, which means that you will have to be slip sliding around these tracks, and those appear just like Super Sprint at complete random, so sometimes you may find a corner littered with traps just like this, and that does not appear when you next load up and play the game. So sometimes there are random elements involved which do make a huge difference, even if you are a master controlling the car. Also managed to upgrade our vehicle off the Alfa Romeo early stage onto the second level. You can see we're now driving a silver car, but that is still not the top notch that you can see driving in front of us, which looks more like a Lamborghini, but that's actually the fastest car in this game. That's very expensive, and it will take some practice and some progress to actually be able to afford that, and again you'll have to manage to get your way around that car dealership by answering lots of questions, and hopefully you will get a discount to make that car affordable. Supercars also has great music composed by Ben Dalglish, which is usually jangly pop kind of music with a nice jangly bass guitar, and that really does have that hard rock feel to this game, and there is nothing like a hard rock soundtrack when you are trying to negotiate these hard levels. And look at that traffic. Though those computer-controlled drivers are literally tripping over themselves and falling over themselves and basically being very slow, I'm still in virtually last position because I keep crashing, and so you will have to really master this game if you want to get far with it and to get to that magic first place every time. And if first place manages to get to the line before you do, then you have to be in maybe the top 3 to get a good score, and if you aren't, well, unfortunately that's game over. Supercars has a great charm on the Amiga, and even though they did release this on other platforms including the Commodore 64, definitely the Amiga version for my money has the best graphics and the best handling. And yes, the final sequel to this game, Supercars 3, was only available on the MS-DOS platform, but for my money the Supercars on the Amiga were the friendliest and the most atmospheric and had the most charm, and a very attractive lady in the upgrades department. Supercars 1 is a very polished top-down experience, and I really do love the smoothness and the playability on offer, and the great graphics and the charm, which weren't really bettered until Supercars 2 came along. Supercars has an 80% rating on the Lemon Amiga database.